Hi everybody. So sourcing and recruiting, they're kind of hard to distinguish between the two. Students have a lot of difficulty with this. So I put together this presentation. It's scenario based to kind of help you understand the components and how it all comes together. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about the impact of equal employment opportunity, the application of stock and concentration statistics, the supervisor and the HR professionals' sourcing priorities, and developing a sourcing plan. So in this scenario, you are a new HR professional at an organization, and you're a generalist. This particular organization tends to have about 6 to 10 openings a month, so not too many. This means that recruiting is not a major function of the organization, but it is an important function of the organization. The job that you're being asked to fill is a mechanical engineer. This particular job requires a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and you must have at least 2 years of experience with moving parts. So one of the problems that they've had in the past recruiting for this position is that the people who are applying for it aren't really qualified. They have mechanical engineering as a background, but they're typically building either cabinets or some type of modular unit that doesn't have moving parts, so fixed parts. So about the company. So this company is a manufacturing organization. It falls into the small to medium-sized category, 200 employees. They have an at-market compensation strategy, so they're not paying above market, getting the best employees, and they're not paying below market, looking for individuals who are kind of at market, so competitive but not above market. Standard benefits, health, dental, life insurance, a good retirement plan. This organization has a great retirement plan. Work-life balance, so really good work-life balance here. This is not common for this type of organization. Low stress in the workplace, again, uncommon for this type of organization. Very engaged in the community and a good reputation as an employer. So that's who we're working for. So let's talk a little bit about the organizational structure. So this organization has a flat structure. So that means that when we hire people into this organization, they kind of need to want to stay where they are or move up 1 or 2 positions. There's not a whole lot of upward mobility in this organization. And because there's only 200 employees and it is a flat structure, the time it takes to move from one step to the next step in the organization may be quite a bit of time. The type of labor that we have includes executive leadership, directors, supervisors, degreed professionals, skilled craft workers, unskilled labor. So that means that we have degreed professionals and craft workers and unskilled labor. There's a big gap between the two. So that means it's difficult to go from skilled craft worker or unskilled labor up to the degreed professional positions. But it may be easier to go from unskilled labor to skilled craft workers with a little bit of education. Departments include manufacturing, engineering, marketing, sales, administration, logistics, and information technology. So let's talk a little bit about equal employment opportunity. The Title VII of the Civil Rights Act applies to organizations with 15 or more employees, and the Age Discrimination and Employment Act covers organizations with 20 or more employees. So both of these acts are covered by our employer with 200 employees. So Title VII covers race, that's all races, color, religion, sex, both men and women, national origin. Age Discrimination and Employment Act covers individuals who are 40 and over. So there's some of the concerns that we need to be worried about as we move into thinking about sourcing in the organization. So let's talk about the stock statistics. So stock statistics are a comparison of what we have percentage-wise for protected classes inside the organization as compared to what is outside the organization. What we want to see is an approximation, not an exact. So we're looking to see if on the face it appears to be that there's any discrimination in the organization, something where we need to look further. So when we look at our employer, our female composition is 21% as compared to the region at 50.3%, which is a little concerning, the state at 50.3%, and the industry at 29.4%. So we brought in the industry because we can see that sometimes industries have an over concentration of one gender, and that's the case in this particular industry. And so the industry demographic might explain what the region or the state can't explain. So looking at the male, we have 79%. The region is 49.7%, the state 49.7%, and the industry 70.6%. So again, a higher percentage in the industry, which can explain to some degree the higher male concentration in the organization. The white employees, we have 65% with the employer level, 48.1% at the region, 43.3% at the state, and 79.5% in the industry. So while this may be concerning at the region, at the state, the industry representation says that the 65% is probably within range. The question would be is if this 65% was concentrated in one area or another, which we'll talk about in a minute. Hispanic population, or the employees within our organization, is 20%. The region is 21.8%. The state is 38.3%, which is a little bit higher, which makes this representation a little bit under what we would expect depending on the jobs. And then the industry is 16.8%, so that puts us over what we would expect for the industry. So when we look at that 38.3% and we're saying that the 20% is potentially underrepresented as compared to the state, the question becomes, when would you look at the region as opposed to the state? And so the question becomes, what is your relevant labor market? So when you're looking for labor, if we say that we're looking for low-skilled, low-wage labor, or we're looking for skilled craft workers, it's more likely that they're going to come from the regional labor market. So we would be looking at these statistics right here. However, if you're looking for degreed labor and there's no specific degrees of that type within the area that are being offered, you may have to look out further at the state level. So looking at the African American representation, we've got 12% within the employer, 11.9% in the region, so that approximates. The state, 11.9%, so it approximates. 10.4% for the industry, so we're within range. Other races, 3% within the employer. The region is 7.7%, so it looks underrepresented. 6.4% at the state, so again it looks underrepresented. And in the industry, 6.8%, so again the other races appear to be underrepresented in the organization. All right, let's look at the concentration statistics. So the concentration statistics tell us where these different protected class demographics are located within the organization. So we're looking at by department in this case. So we've got manufacturing, engineering, marketing, sales, administration, logistics, and information technology. You can see on this side over here, we've got the number of employees in each department, and then how they're spread out across the protected classes. And you can see the highlighted yellow tells you that there is probably a concern, possibly a concern, with this particular demographic for that particular department. So for the females in the manufacturing department, there are only 8 employees, so that's 6.8% of the population. When we look at engineering, which is the job that we're hiring for, there are no female employees in the engineering department. It is 100% male with 16 employees. So that's a pretty small work group at 16 employees, but it's potentially concerning that there's no female workers there. And looking down at the marketing, you've got half and half. Sales, 10% female, 90% male. So again, overrepresentation of the males in the sales department, underrepresentation of the females. Now, administration, we have an overrepresentation of females and an underrepresentation of males. Logistics, 40% are females, 60% are males. So maybe potentially an underrepresentation of females, but again, when we're looking at the industry, probably not concerning when you look at the industry. Information technology, 100% females, so definitely an underrepresentation of men in the information technology department. And again, we look by race, so protected class by race, white, Hispanic, African American, and other races. You can see that there is a substantial representation of white employees, but there is an underrepresentation across the board on Hispanic, African American, and other employees. So does this mean that there is discrimination in the organization? Maybe, maybe not. It just means that this is concerning, and it is something that we would need to look into. If we were a new HR professional, one of the things that we would want to look at is the flow statistics. So flow statistics tells us the number of individuals in each demographic that applied for the organization. That would be really important. And then the number that was selected by comparison. So we would apply the 80% rule to see if there was any appearance of discrimination in the selection process. So that would probably be my next step, but we're not going to do that in this presentation. So when looking at the engineer, so we're hiring for a mechanical engineer, and we can see that here are the state demographics, because this is a degreed labor. There is no mechanical engineering degrees here in the local area. And so we would be looking out wider at the state. So we're pulling in the state demographics, we're pulling in the industry, but we're also pulling in the profession. So we're going to look at what the range is for the profession. So when we look in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is where these statistics came from, you can see that the female population in this profession, the mechanical engineering profession, is 6.6%. That's really low, which could potentially explain why we don't have a female representation in this department. The male representation in the profession is 93.4%, very high. White, 80.4%, again, very high. So this could explain why we have higher representations of white males in this department. Hispanics, the representation in the profession is 8.4%. For African Americans, it's 5.1%, and for others, it's 11.6%. So you can see here are our expected ranges of what we might expect to see in the department, especially as the department gets larger. These are not hard, fast numbers. We're not saying that this number right here needs to be exactly within 43.3 and 80.4. We're saying this is a potential targeted range where we would be less concerned about the appearance of discrimination than if it were way outside the range, which 93.75 is a bit too far outside the range for comfort. I would want to look into this a little bit more. So let's talk about the supervisor's priorities in hiring for this position. So he says that this is a small department, and with only 16 employees, group fit is really important. The person needs to be able to perform within 30 days. They need to ramp up and be a high performer within 30 days. Time to fill the position is equally as important as quality of hire, and retention is really important for this company. It's a good place to work. We want to have retention. One of my concerns might be that if we bring in a female applicant who's offered the job, group fit might be an issue if we have an all-male department. So I might want to look into the culture of the organization and the culture of the work group to see if there's any work that I need to do from a cultural perspective to make sure that when we do start bringing in applicants, that there is a level of comfort there with the diversity and inclusion. So let's talk about actually developing a sourcing plan. How are we going to attract a diverse pool of applicants? And what are our priorities at that? So for HR, we've just talked about the stock and concentration statistics and the fact that you do need to look up the flow statistics for this organization. If you had the sources of the labor that had previously been hired, that is something that you would want to look at. What's the quality of hire from those sources, and what are the protected class demographics from those sources? So equal employment opportunity would be for a definite concern for us. Quality of hire was already mentioned by the supervisor, and time to hire. So those are our three big priorities in hiring for this position. When we develop our sourcing plan, we have to keep these in mind. So internal sourcing is one of our options. Talent inventories, if the organization has an HRIS system that keeps talent inventories, this might be a potential, except for the fact we've already said that this is an engineering job and there is a plateau between the low-skilled, low-wage workers, the craft workers, and the degreed professional positions. So it's unlikely that we have any inside talent for this job. Internal job boards, replacement plans and charts, career pathing. So these are all potential items in the future, but maybe not for the moment. If we were able to develop an internal university or a tuition assistance program for specific career sets, that might be something we could do in the future. So what are our external sources of talent? First, employee referrals. This is a great way to get qualified talent. employee referrals, the employee doesn't want to ruin their reputation within the organization, and so they tend to hire good referrals, or they tend to refer good hires. And those particular hires tend to be good producers, right? The downside of employee referrals is that people tend to refer people like me. So I know people like me, those are the types of people that I'm going to refer. At least that is what research has shown in the past. Of course, with the changing demographics of the age groups, the generations, this may shift, but for the moment, employee referrals tends to refer people who are just like me. And if we have a lack of diversity, so we have the existence of underrepresented groups within that department or within the organization, employee referrals are going to bring in more lack of diversity. So this is probably not the direction we want to go. The organization's career page. Well, we talked about the fact that we're a small employer. We're located in Central Texas, and a lot of our jobs are sourced locally. We have a good reputation locally. But this particular job is one that we may be looking further at, so the state labor market. And so our organization career page might be a nice place to direct people to, but it's probably not going to be in and of itself a great attraction for diverse applicants. Internet job boards. Internet job boards are great because they're huge, and there's a very nice representation of diversity in the job boards. The one limitation of job boards is that there is a broad range of diversity, and you can't say in my sourcing strategy I want to pull in more of this particular underrepresented groups. So it doesn't allow for that opportunity. Workforce centers. Workforce centers are free, so they're a great place to post the job. Advertising, so that sounds kind of intuitive, but one of the things that you have to be concerned about with advertising is that if we're new to this organization and we see that there may be some underrepresented groups in the organization, how are they advertising? So where are they placing the advertisement? And so we already talked about that being a concern, but what is in the advertisement itself? So that may be something that needs to be looked at and revised. Outplacement agencies, those typically place individuals who are being laid off. Given that we're looking for a mechanical engineer, it's unlikely that an outplacement agency is going to help us find this talent, because degreed professionals tend to be unemployed a shorter period of time, so it's a very small opportunity for us. Temporary agencies, that's potentially a route that we could go, probably less likely with degreed labor. Private placement agencies. Those are great for niche jobs that you're trying to hire for. It costs a lot of money. Us having 200 employees, it may not be a good option for us. Associations. So every profession has associations. We're looking for mechanical engineers. It does cost to post job advertisements in associations, but if we're looking for a particular group or an underrepresented group, this may be a great way to source those applicants. Trade schools. Trade schools usually have up to an associate's degree in skilled craft workers and trades. So given that we're looking for a mechanical engineer, it's unlikely that a trade school is going to get us a qualified applicant. Colleges and universities. Well, we're looking for degreed labor, so you would think that this would be a great place to look, except for the fact that we want 2 years of experience. Because we want 2 years of experience, we don't want somebody who's just graduating or about to graduate. But those colleges and universities may have alumni networks. The alumni networks are individuals who have graduated and have experience, so we definitely want to look at alumni networks. And then social media. Social media is a big thing right now. A lot of professionals use social media, so that might be a very good avenue for us to look at. So putting our sourcing plan together, we have the organizational website that we want to update, general advertising, so what we've done in the past may work depending on what the demographics were of the sources that were used, internet job boards that have a broad base of diversity, and niche advertising. So as opposed to the generalized advertising, we want to do some niche advertising where the advertisements may be developed for us by a marketing professional. Associations, so professional associations, social media, and alumni networks. So on the face that sounds very generalized. Well, we could have come up with that for any position, but let's talk about this a little bit more. So associations and social media. So if we're looking for underrepresented groups, women and professionals of color, We have the National Society for Black Engineers, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, the Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers, and the Society of Women Engineers. Now, all of these associations have a LinkedIn group, so a group where we could actually be posting pages. They have Instagram, Facebook groups and pages, and Twitter. So these are all the places that we could be potentially engaging with the underrepresented groups within our organization and in this particular department. So that's one of the ways that we can source and increase the number of underrepresented applicants in our pool. So mechanical engineers, I did an internet search of the top 10 engineering programs in Texas, because remember we said this is a statewide labor market that we're looking at. So I came up with A&M University, University of Texas Austin, Rice University, University of Houston, Southern Methodist University, Texas Tech University, University of Texas Dallas, Baylor University, University of Texas Arlington, and University of North Texas. So those were the top 10 engineering programs in Texas. So next I looked at each one, every one of them, to look at their gender diversity and their racial diversity. And these are the three that I came up with. Rice University is 3 hours from us. They have 410 students in their program, and it's 42% female overall. I wasn't able to get the percentage for their particular college of engineering. They have 23% Asian, 14% Hispanic, 12% African American. The average salary for a graduate is $70,500. University of Houston is 3 hours away. There are 2,869 students currently in their program, 48% female overall. Their racial diversity is 35% Hispanic, 22% Asian, 9.9% African American. The average salary is $68,700. So a little bit lower. Rice University being a smaller university, University of Houston being a bigger one. I'm not really sure what the difference is in the income stream. It might be their alumni network or their current development organization there. So the University of Texas at Arlington is 2 hours away. They have 7,600 students in the program, 61% female overall, 26% Hispanic, 14% African American, 11% Asian. Average salary is $63,100. So as you can see, these three universities, to just say we're going to source from a college, sounds very generic, and it is. So that's not the approach we would want to take. We would want to say for college recruiting, if we want to improve these underrepresented groups, we would need to target specific colleges. So we would develop relationships potentially with these three colleges. We would contact the faculty advisor, who should know a lot about the alumni who graduated. Whoever's in charge of the alumni network might be a great place to go. Some of the alumni networks have job boards that they post out to their alumni. So depending on how organized the units are, these could be a very excellent source of underrepresented individuals that would substantially increase our sourcing strategy as far as the number of underrepresented groups that come into the applicant pool. That brings up another issue. So when we were looking at the stock and concentration statistics overall, females were 21% of the organization, Hispanics were 20%, so they appeared to be underrepresented. Other races were 3%, it appeared to be underrepresented. Engineering and sales also had an underrepresentation of African Americans. Information technology had an underrepresentation of men and African Americans as well. And then administration was men and African Americans were underrepresented. So when you think about it, this means that really we have an issue with potentially diversity as a whole in this organization, or how we are hiring as a whole. So one of the things that I would want to do is, when I was looking at my sourcing strategies, right now I may be targeting sources to improve my opportunities to increase the underrepresented demographics in the engineering department. But I would probably want to do that overall with the university. So as things start to balance out, you would expect that those numbers, the percentages, would start coming into range over time. And you could then start having your organizational website being a major platform and branding the organization as a great place to work, a place for diversity and inclusion. The general advertising would have more in it that was related to the diversity and inclusion. We wouldn't have to do so much niche marketing. The internet job boards would be real important, social media would be important, and then we would develop those alumni networks. So those three that I had identified would probably end up being long-term sources of applicants. So thinking long-term on this, we would want to find a way to source a broad base of applicants in a strategy that will work for this company over time. And so while we did say that there was the appearance of a concern about potential discrimination, as the new HR professional, you would definitely want to investigate further. But this is how the sourcing plan may migrate after you've hired for this one particular position. And this is more likely what you're going to see as you look into organizations and their recruiting platforms. I also wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about targeted or niche sourcing. The reason that we're doing it is to make sure that the applicant pool is sufficiently diverse and that we are providing equal opportunity into the organization for underrepresented groups. And what we're not doing, so what I've said over and over is these are general guidelines, these are target ranges. It's not a hard, fast guideline or rule, and it's not a quota. We do not develop quotas. We don't say that we went to all this work and now we're absolutely going to hire a female, or we're absolutely going to hire one of the racial demographics that's underrepresented in this department. What we're doing is expanding the applicant pool so that the percentages of qualified applicants who are in underrepresented groups is increased. And so statistically speaking, if our sourcing system has more underrepresented groups in it, then they will make it into the recruiting system, into the assessment process, into the selection process, and statistically they should move through to the job offer, in the same rate. So if we have a higher percentage of underrepresented groups throughout the process, it's expected that over time the number of underrepresented groups in the organization will come up, and that the organization will be balanced as compared to the labor markets and the industry and the profession. So you do have to keep all of those things in mind. But the idea is that we're looking for balance and approximations, not exact numbers. We're not getting to this job offer point and saying, now that we've got to the job offer point, we are going to intentionally discriminate against one candidate because they're not the gender or the race that we're looking for. This is not what we're going to do. That's discrimination. But what we're going to do is increase the number of individuals who are qualified in underrepresented groups, so as they move through the process, the number who are getting a job offer has increased. Now, if you get to this point where you have the number of individuals in underrepresented groups getting more job offers, but they're not taking the job offers, then you have to ask yourself, what else is wrong in the system? What's going on? Why are these individuals not coming into our organization? And then it may be a culture issue, it may be a policy issue, there could be any number of other problems, and it could be that we're paying at market ranges for a group that is highly desirable in the labor market, and so we're not competitive. So there are a number of things that we need to think about, not just the sourcing, but this particular presentation was about sourcing. So what we went through today in this presentation, we talked about equal employment opportunity extensively, the application of stock statistics, concentration statistics, multiplicity of priorities, so the supervisor's priorities and concerns as compared to the HR priorities and concerns, target applicant sourcing, and developing a sourcing plan. So if you have any questions about developing a sourcing plan, please let me know.